This evening, the Duke of Norfolk, who lives at Arundel Castle, has been banned from driving for 6 months. Edward Fitzalan Howard, who was in charge of organising the late Queen's funeral and will be in charge of organising King Charles' coronation next year, cut in front of a police car and ran a red light while using his mobile phone. In court, he pleaded exceptional hardship to try and get a lighter sentence, but the magistrates went through with the ban as he already had 9 points on his licence for past speeding offences. So, is it one rule for them and one rule for the rest of us? Nick Freeman, known as Mr. Loophole, specialises in speeding offences for celebrity clients and joins me now. Hello, Nick.
Good afternoon, Danny.
This is quite an interesting case. Just talk us through your view on what we've just heard there.
Okay, well, look, he had 9 points in his licence. I assume that he was summoned with using a mobile phone, which upon conviction is 6 points, and also failing to comply with an automatic traffic signal, a red light, which is 3 points, and the magistrate was just the highest number of points. So he's looking at 9 plus 6, which puts him over the threshold. So he's then liable for a minimum mandatory ban of 6 months. That's assuming that there's been no disqualification of 56 days or more during the last 3 years. I don't think there was. There clearly wasn't, in fact, because the ban would have been more than 6 months. So the threshold then is for him to establish on the balance of probabilities that he would suffer, or other people would suffer, exceptional hardship, which really is a very high threshold, and it means what it says. So,
especially when you live in a castle.
Well, when you're worth 100 million, it's difficult not to expect a court to say, look, you can have a driver in the daytime and a driver at night, and 3 8-hour shifts in a day, get 3 drivers. That isn't going to be a problem. So, in my view, there was an alternative way of dealing with this. He pleaded not guilty. I don't know what his defence was. He changed his plea on the day, so he lost credit. That shouldn't affect the argument of exceptional hardship, but magistrates, being human beings, wouldn't be impressed by that. But another way of dealing with it would have been to say, look, he's jumped a red light, he was on his phone, he's cut up a police car. This actually is quite serious. Disqualify him for the offence itself. And because the first thing the magistrates are asked to consider is the offence serious enough to warrant a disqualification? And this absolutely is. The combination of these offences, in my view, would have justified a short period of disqualification, 14, 28 days, and that would have operated as an alternative to penalty points. So in other words, if the court had been persuaded to ban him under a different section for a short period, he'd have had a short period of ban, he'd have been left with 9 points on his licence, which would have remained there for whatever time as a sort of Damocles, so that he'd have to drive very carefully. And he would have then been able to carry on with his duties that he claims are so important to him, and clearly are. No one's diminishing that. What they're saying is, look, you can still carry on with those duties, just get some drivers.
Yes, so in a way, that kind of answers that question about whether it's one rule for them and one rule for us. He's organising the next coronation of our king, and he's still got his ban. So actually, that ends up right and proper, doesn't it? Because if you're doing that in your works van, same thing would happen to you.
Yeah, look, had he been in his works van, and had it been Joe or Jane Public or whoever, and they were facing a loss of employment, and that would result in them not being able to pay their mortgage, not being able to pay their household bills, it would have had catastrophic consequences at this very difficult economic time, then undoubtedly a court would have been persuaded to let them have one more chance, that was the spirit of the legislation, to let really deserving cases have one more go. So I would say to you, in answer to your question, it's actually much harder for a celebrity or someone who has deep pockets to get off, because the first thing you say is, well, can you not afford a driver? And those people with deep pockets can. So it's rare that when someone is famous that they get off on with this argument.
Nick, nice to talk to you. Thanks for your time. Nick Freeman there, known as Mr. Loophole to the news. The Duke of Norfolk lives at Arundel Castle, been banned for driving for 6 months.